It seems like with the Senate budget ideas, though, maybe a lot of it is based on that subcommittee, the new subcommittee's idea of finding that additional money, the $5 billion that the lieutenant governor has tasked them to find. Do you think that's so?
Well, I think that there are going to be a number of things that can be looked at, and I would say, as Chairman Coleman has said, over the next few weeks, as the conference committee starts to come together between the House and the Senate, there's going to be the opportunity to explore what some of these other revenue generating opportunities are. And I think we pretty much have drawn a line in the sand that we're not looking at increases in sales taxes, although there are some bills out there promoting that and going to make us think about it a little bit harder. But I think in general this legislative body is sort of committed to not raising sales taxes because they feel that at a time of a recession that's not the right thing to do. But that's not the only place that you can look for additional revenue. There are other opportunities of things that we can look at that might generate some revenue that are not taxes at all. You know, I'm on record as supporting using or leveraging more of the rainy day funds. Chairman Coleman and I worked hard 100%. Last session to preserve that fund for the purpose that we find ourselves in today. The only difference is that the circumstances are much worse than we even anticipated they would be. And so, yes, we did use a portion of that money in order to pay off the bills that we have come due this biennium. But historically, and Chairman Coleman can speak to this better than me, historically we have used the near entirety of the rainy day fund, probably 5 times, for the purposes of things that were in the future budget. And for some reason we have gotten off on the idea that we need to be a little bit different about it this time. And I would say, well, we need to be a little bit different because it's a lot bigger problem than we've had in the past. And so I think there's opportunities to do things with the Economic Stabilization Fund that will help Texans. We can use more of that money, or we can what I call reserve some of that money while we do some deferrals. That'll raise some money also, all the legitimate things that can be done when you're kind of short of cash flow and things. But we have $6 billion that is going to be left in there as a result of, you know, the monies that have gone into it. We're going to add $1.4 billion a year, especially with the price of oil being what it is right now. And so we're going to replenish this fund at a pretty good clip. Leaving a little bit back there would be the prudent thing to do, I think, but adding to it as we see that it's going to be added to. But understanding that an economic stabilization fund is not a disaster relief fund. It is a fund that was put in place to deal with the economic circumstances that we find ourselves facing today.
Representative Coleman, are you...
I agree 100%. This is something where the actual tax is collected now on, and it's a severance tax on oil and gas, and it's a tax that companies pay. And it is not a new tax. It's an existing tax, and it's going to be collected no matter what. And that's the premise that most people have given. We don't want any new taxes. We don't want to increase a tax. Well, the stabilization fund is not new and it's not increased. But at $3.50 gas for regular, believe me, it's going to raise more and more money. And if the destabilization in the Middle East continues, we'll see, unfortunately, gas prices go up, oil prices, but we'll see more money come into that fund.
When we're talking about the number of votes necessary to get money from the rainy day fund passed in the budget, are you seeing more Republicans cross over and make that decision with the Democratic Party?
Well, I think reality is a good motivator. And if anybody wants to go home and make sure that at least they didn't take the school district and the schools to a really bad place, or they're the people who are particularly in nursing homes or home care. I think it's becoming very clear that we have to have sources of revenue, and that is a good one. And we'll know Thursday with the existing left part of this fiscal year left whether or not we have enough votes to use the rainy day fund. I think we do. I mean, I'm confident that people are coming to the realization that, you know, it have to be responsible.
Speaker Strauss, put several freshmen on the Appropriations Committee, which is something that is not typically done, but there were more freshmen on at this time than the previous 2 sessions that I served on. And I think those individuals are seeing a very real understanding of what the budget circumstances that we're in. As a freshman, when you come in, you don't have that history to kind of look back on and say, well, how good was it or how bad was it? And I think these individuals who are getting kind of a full dose of appropriations are understanding that, and they'll be having conversations with their colleagues in the Republican Party on that particular issue and saying, understanding that. To use monies into the future biennium requires 100 votes, and so there's a little bit steeper hill to climb there. But Chairman Coleman is correct. I think when people start to see what the repercussions are of the proposed budget in their communities, how are the school districts being affected? How are the nursing homes being affected? How are recipients of the Medicaid program having any ease of finding providers in order to provide that medical care and so forth? That hits just about every district out there. And I think when people understand that there's monies available in different places out there and that they were put there for this purpose, that they'll start to see, I think, at least they'll get a pretty good dose of reality in terms of where we should try to look for additional monies.
Let's talk about HB 5. How does this work?
Oh, the compact bill. Well, what the design is that states would come together and build an allegiance for providing care. In some compact bills, it's done with a block grant. So they design it so that the dollars come into one place as a block grant, and then they create plans together and then use that to reduce cost and some can expand care, but at least reduce cost to provide care to the folks that are in the compact and in those states. It sounds really good, but there's some challenges here. When Medicaid is block granted, there is no guarantee that there'll be enough money through that block grant over time to actually take care of the growth in population and needs in the program, particularly because baby boomers are headed towards that proverbial nursing home, and I think that's one of the limitations. Now, if it's just acute care, that's a little easier, meaning hospital and doctor care. But the block grant portions of that, I have a challenge with that because it limits us to the money we're spending now. And we have not been a state that's spent as much as, say, a New York per capita. And so if they got a block grant and this was used, their population isn't growing as fast as ours, and they'll have a whole bunch more money to take care of their folks than we will.
Is this how you see it as well?
I'm supportive of the concept of the block grant. Rhode Island was recently given a block grant. Not recently, they were given a block grant at the end of the Bush era, and they in fact have realized some savings with that. And so I think, though, Chairman Coleman makes a very good point, and that is you have to take into consideration the growth. We are growing faster than any other state in the union, and we have to understand that if we enter into any kind of a block grant scenario, there has to be some provision that allows for the growth of the population. And in fact, Rhode Island had that incorporated into their block grant, that there would be a provision for expected growth. But it's a very serious thing to take up, and it's not a panacea per se. But I think most of us would look at and say, you know, if we weren't quite held to some of the strings and the requirements that the federal government puts on us, perhaps we could manage the money a little bit better and get a little bit more bang for our buck. I believe that. I think that's what Texans can do. But we need to go into it very thoughtfully and very carefully. A bill that I'll be laying out in the next week or so will have to do with, okay, let's pretend we got this grant. Now what do we do with it? And so I'll have a bill that'll come forward that'll create a commission that will actually, in a very disciplined and deliberate way, look at what this health plan for the poor and the elderly and the aged and disabled might look like out there, so that we know how it would be managed.